This is Robert Stearns. Hey, I want to thank you for tuning in. I really believe that learning is one of the greatest joys in life. And one of the greatest ways to learn is simply to have meaningful conversations, both with those who come from a similar background as yours, as well as those whose background might be very different. So my hope is that as we connect and converse with leaders from all around the world, that we will learn and grow together. If you're new with us, hit the subscribe button and we'll deliver the new episodes to you right away. So wherever you are, on a run, in the car, at the kitchen table with some coffee, welcome to the conversation. And good evening, everybody. Thursday night, no better place to be than right here for Bishop and the Rabbi. Glad to see you. Glad you dropped by. Hey, you know the drill. Do me a favor right now and add in your name, the city you're watching from. Say hello to everyone. And then hit the share button. As you hit the share button and the like button, we start to spread the message of Jerusalem-centered Christianity, Jerusalem-based Christianity. This is the generation think about this, folks, out of all generations in history over the past 2,000 years, there has not been any generation like the one that we are currently in, where Christians around the world, the followers of Jesus, are saying, what were the actual teachings of Jesus? What was the mindset of Jesus? What was the understanding that he left for his followers? What was the mindset of the church of the book of Acts? Acts chapter 2, verse 42 to 47. Those earliest followers of Jesus, before his message went to the Gentile world, and then well before there was the syncretism that came in during the reign of Constantine, and of course the Council of Nicaea, which began to make this permanent shift out of which what we know as modern day Christianity has evolved. So we are on an archaeological expedition every week. We're going deeper and deeper and deeper to understand what were the scriptures that Jesus knew, the holidays Jesus kept, the prayers Jesus prayed, and not only Jesus, but Paul, Peter, James, John, all of his early disciples. What would their mindset and their understanding have been? And of course, we're having this amazing conversation with the relatives of Jesus, the family of Jesus, who are the Jewish people, who God has kept for generations. I often say, where are the Hittites? Where are the Jebusites? Where are the Canaanites? Where are the Amorites? Where are the Amalekites? They're gone. They're blown away with the winds of history. But the Jewish people remain. Their identity is strong, and they're now regathered into their ancient homeland, the state of Israel. We just came back from Israel celebrating the 75th anniversary. Most of you saw my wonderful, beautiful meeting with President Herzog. He welcomed my sons and I so nicely to the president's residence there, Beit HaNasi in Jerusalem. And so all of this is happening in this amazing generation. Yes, there's a lot of bad going on. Don't even look at the political realm. It's a disaster. I'll tell you what, there are so many negative things happening out there. But in the midst of it, I still believe that there are common sense people rooted in the Judeo-Christian tradition who understand the power of what it means to come together around the Word of God and to wrestle, to discuss. The Bible says, come, let us reason together. The New Testament verse says, let us work out our salvation with fear and trembling. So we are on this spiritual journey together. It is so good to be back and to see you again. I've been traveling. Danny, I've been all over the place. Where have I been? I've been in Los Angeles and Washington and New York, and before that in Israel. But here we are coming to you from headquarters, and so glad to see you all tuning in right now tonight. hit the share button, hit the like button, and sign in. Give us your name, where you're watching from. In just a moment, we're going to welcome our special guest. He is absolutely one of our all-time favorite people in the world, for sure. But three or four quick announcements. Number one, we are finally hosting our very first women's mission to Israel. The ladies have asked for it for years. So ladies, April 2 through 12, 2024, April 2 through 12, 2024, you can go to Awakened and Empowered. awakenedandempowered.com. Somebody will put that for me in the comments there. And that's all the information. We've got an incredible group of ladies leading this trip. It's going to be life-changing. Ladies, this is the one you've been waiting for. So get the information there. Then, just in a few days from now, East Coast Conference is coming at the Tabernacle here in Buffalo, New York, eagleswings.org/ECC 2023. I want you to join us here at the Tabernacle for East Coast Conference. And then right after East Coast Conference, we're looking forward to being back down at Blue Mountain for our annual trip to Blue Mountain, July 25th through the 30th. That Saturday will be our special partners lunch for all of our partners in the region. So if you're one of our Eagles Wings partners, register for the Saturday partners lunch. You'll be our guest. There's no charge. We host you, but we need to know that you're coming so that we can prepare to have enough meals for you. So that's it for the announcements. Go to the website. We just updated the website, by the way. We're excited about that. I just left a meeting with the updated website, some new bells and whistles on there. We're constantly trying to improve to do the very best we can to serve you, to serve your family, to make your spiritual journey more meaningful as you study the Word and you pursue your relationship with God. Well, our rabbi today, absolutely one of our all-time favorite. Danny, I have to think about this, but I think he may have been our very first ever guest on Bishop and the Rabbi. Bishop and the Rabbi grew out of COVID. Remember COVID? COVID shut everything down. We thought, what are we going to do? And we pivoted and we launched Bishop and the Rabbi and Torah Tuesdays. And man, what an incredible journey that has been. But our dear friend, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, who serves as the director of the Jewish Rabbinic Council of New York, and he'll correct that title. I know I didn't get it exactly right. But he is absolutely one of the most influential Jewish leaders, not only in New York City, although that is his epicenter, but he is known around the nation and around the world. He's an incredible, incredible human being. I genuinely feel privileged to have him as a dear friend in my life. And he's got a quick wit. He's got great insight, not only into current events, but how those current events relate to the Bible, relate to the Torah. Join me and welcome our friend, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik. Rabbi, there you are. Good to see you, sir.
Good to be seen. I must tell you, as I listened to you talk about me, I thought to myself, it's always good to hear your eulogy when you're living. Because later on, you certainly don't get that opportunity, I don't think. Robert, it is said that a friendship is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. And I've been blessed with your friendship over the years, and I could not ask for a better gift. So thank you for all you do and all you are. You are simply there for everyone. I remember talking to a woman who was rescued on September 11th. And I met the firefighter who rescued her. And I said to him, what did she say when you were there? She said, I knew you'd come. I knew you'd come. And I have to say this, you are always there for the Jewish people. And the relationship is such that whenever we are in trouble, I think to myself, I know Robert Stearns will be there. I knew you'd come. Let me give you one quick story because you touched on the politics of Israel.
Yeah.
Which, are not pretty at the present time, but they're not pretty in America either. Right. There's a WhatsApp group, and they were talking one day, and someone said, I need a flag for the demonstration tomorrow on judicial reform. Does anybody in this group have an Israeli flag? And someone said, yeah, you can borrow mine. Someone else had said to the person, After you finish with that flag at your protest, could I borrow it also? I need it for the counter protest. I'm on the other. So you're looking at one flag, two people on different sides. You know, it's been said that the Jewish star is the fitting symbol for the Jewish people because you have two triangles going in opposite directions. Uh, so I know that this is challenging at the moment,
Yeah.
but somehow uh, we've been there and we are here. My father, when he would go to the cemetery, and he was a survivor, and I'm a child of survivors, he would say very simply in Yiddish, looking down at graves, Mizanendo, we're here. We didn't forget you. So I think, in line with what you said earlier, after all we've been through, we're here and we'll continue to be here. One of the reasons is that we are blessed to be the beneficiaries of your commitment to us. No people could ask for better people standing with them than those from Eagle's Wings, led by Bishop Robert Stearns.
Well, my brother, you are very, very kind and very gracious, and I do genuinely, and I think you know this, I cherish our friendship, and I have great, great respect for you. Your ability, Jesus, in his famous Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, one that he led with, he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." And Rabbi, that is who you have been. You have the ability to let everyone around you feel heard, feel that their presence matters. But in the midst of the hearing, draw us into consensus, draw us into that. Again, I'm going to use the word common sense, the kind of common sense, which is increasingly uncommon. I don't know what happened to common sense. It's uncommon now. It's hard to find. But we're so very, very grateful for who you've been to Eagle's Wings over the years, and I believe will continue to be. Rabbi, it's interesting because when we look at today's parsha, and maybe this is a good spot to jump off, right? Because we're in Korach, everybody. If you want to turn to Numbers chapter 16, Numbers 16 through 18:30. All right, through the end, through verse 32 of chapter 18. Moses is facing, right, this, you talk about strife, and some people might not fully understand. Israeli politics is confusing, and I think to myself, I know more than many, many people, but it's still confusing to me. American politics is also confusing, but at least you kind of have this sense that there's two parties, whereas in Israel, you've got all of these various parties constantly jockeying for position. But there is this moment in the scripture, I mean, it's very apropos, that is similar to this moment where Moses is leading. Moses has brought the children out of Israel. And we'll just launch with this for a moment. And Aaron is there with him. But all of a sudden, there is the rebellion. Korach incites this rebellion against Moses, and the children of Israel, who need to be unified more than ever. And folks, can I say, Israel needs to be unified more than ever. The threat of Iran is constantly increasing. The U.S. needs to be more unified than ever. Folks, China is at our door. I mean, just wake up and see the incursion of the Chinese in this nation in every way. We need to be unified as a people, but Korach foments rebellion. He stirs up rebellion. And Dathan and Abiram join him. And a significant group kind of rises up against Moses, and there's this challenge for the people. Reflect on that for us, Rabbi, on this challenge to Moses' leadership. And then what lessons can we take away? You and I were chatting just before we went on live. We've got this, it's going to be an election cycle coming up where, this nation is going to be tested again. How do we pray? How do we communicate? We're going to have folks we're coming to the summer. We're going to have folks at picnics, on family vacations. How do we not follow the example of Korach, Dathan, Abiram? How do we become more like the peacemakers that God wants us to be?
Well, it's a very difficult portion to read because it's a significant threat to Moses' leadership, who was a great leader. And I think there are a few lessons to be learned. Firstly, I remember telling a congregation years ago, if we were to take a poll and say, who was Korach? And he would say, gee, I'm not sure, not familiar. I say, think of Edward G. Robinson in the Ten Commandments. Oh, yeah, now I know. Now I know who Korach is. There's a statement from a film years ago, when you assume leadership, you give up the right to be human because you're held to a standard that is inhuman, right? Moses was tested. And by an unfair challenge, this was not a challenge predicated on a sincere commitment to make things better. It was really a selfish kind of commitment because Korach wanted to succeed Moses, wanted to cast Moses aside. But I want to add this. If you go to the next portion of Shlach Lecha, where you have this delegation visiting the promised land, think of the results. 10 people came back with a negative report.
Right.
2 people came back with a positive report. The 2 overruled the 10. Now, we believe in democracy. We believe in fairness. How is it possible that the minority's opinion was greater than the majority's opinion?
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And the answer, I think, is a minority, or any group of people that stands for decency, that stands for, is steadfast in its commitment to principle, has the ability to overcome the challenge. Moses could handle it because Moses was committed and comfortable with who he was. My father used to say to me years ago, I don't care what kind of Jew you become, be proud of the Jew that you become. And I think Moses stood with pride, with a backbone, a jawbone, and was able to withstand the challenge. Because ultimately, I think that integrity and independence and intelligence, they all win the day. But in the meantime, it could be a very bitter dispute, and it was. But I always think of my mom. When I would come home with my report card, she would look at one subject first before anything else: conduct. Conduct was critical. How did you behave in class? How did you behave with the teacher and the students? And God help you if you didn't get an A in conduct. And I do believe that when we have leaders who conduct themselves with decency and dignity, we will be victorious. But the interim can be a very painful one. So Korach ultimately lost. Moses won that battle, right? The 2 overcame the 10.
Right.
But it was all based upon true belief in what is true and what is false.
Rabbi, as you're sharing that, my mind goes to a generation ago in this nation and the civil rights movement. And I think of MLK, and I think of, Dr. King, and I think of the rabbis who marched with Dr. King and the power of the civil rights movement. And, we look back now with embarrassment, with contrition, with shame on the racism that was so prevalent and legitimized and systemic against the African-American community, and of course also the Jewish community largely equally had disadvantages placed on them in those seasons. And yet you see Dr. King, my goodness, when you hear him speak, he spoke with such equanimity. He spoke with such dignity. He spoke with such clarity, such moral clarity. And as you say, he started, no one believed that the changes could come. No one believed that the school systems could change and that change could trickle down into the nation. But in a nonviolent, but persistent and confrontational way, nonviolent but confrontational, he was able to stand for righteousness, and he became the fulcrum, he became the hinge that was able to shift society to where it needed to be.
And he was a person of faith. And the people,
Precisely.
you've spoken, I know, I've heard you talk about Abraham, Joshua, Heschel. They walked arm in arm, and it was faith to faith, face to face. People rooted in deep belief, and I think that inspired them to speak with that courage to realize, even though there are those who are against us, we know what we stand for, and we shall overcome.
And I remember that in his last speech, he even felt, and this is where I want to go here in a moment. Well, let me go here first, and then I'll go to that. It says here in chapter 16, Moses is hearing all of these things. This is all happening. And verse 4, it says, Moses falls down on his face. In other words, Moses is not so much defensive of his position as much as he is saying, Korach and those who are rebelling, you're sinning against God. Moses doesn't even view it that it's an attack on me. Don't you understand? You're going to incur the wrath of God. And there was something about Dr. King that understood that if our nation was ever going to be one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all, we needed to right these wrongs. And just in his last speech, he stood up and he preached. He said, I've been to the mountain. I may not get over to the other side. Well, who is he echoing? He's echoing Moses. He's echoing exactly Moses coming to the mountain, bringing the children out of Israel, but coming to that crucial point. So, Rabbi, leaders don't just form society, but leadership forms the soul of that leader. It's incredibly pressure-filled to be a leader. You know that. You've stood in leadership roles.
Look, I remember reading an article about Moses being denied entry to the promised land. And the author said, it's not fair. All he wanted to do was enter into that, that special sacred place, the promised land, and he didn't get to do it. He saw the generations who would, but he didn't get to do it. And the person said, isn't that really something that's so wrong? Why wasn't he rewarded? And the answer he gave was very interesting, that when you're a person who's a true leader and you have aspirations, you never get to see the promised land. You never see the fulfillment of everything you dream of, right? You get to see, hopefully, a continuation through others, but you may not be there with them as they enter. And to me, it's a lesson for all of us. It's better to have aspirations and not fulfill them fully, rather than have no aspirations and fulfill them. Right? So I think Moses was a great success. And, we have a holiday, as you know, called Tabernacle, Sukkot. And Sukkot, we carry a palm branch. And we form a procession in the synagogue, walking around with the palm branch. And someone asked years ago, well, why don't we walk around with a shofar? We have a shofar. Why don't we walk around with that? And the answer is, a shofar you can hide. You put it in your pocket. The palm branch you can't hide. And that says, if you really believe in the cause, you can't hide from it. You have to stand for it. And I think looking at Moses, he was the person with that spine. He was the and by the way, not a great orator. He had a stutter, it is said. But as I learned years ago from a professor at school, when you have a good product, you don't have to be a great orator. When you have an inferior product, you got to be a slick salesman. But he had something that he knew was right, was honest, was meant for the betterment of people, and therefore he was there for them, with them, but not in the promised land. And I think it's a lesson for all of us. We never get to see everything we want to see in our world.
There's a great saying, Rabbi, that I learned from the Jewish people. I don't have it memorized, so you're going to help me with it, but it's something that it is not up to you to complete the work, but neither are you allowed to abandon the work. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it
You're
exactly
not, you're not
correctly.
exempt from beginning. You may not
Yeah,
complete it, but you have to begin it, right? And hopefully you inspire others to follow after you. Look, I've met your sons many times. And one of the things that I find so compelling about them is they are walking on this path with you where they want to continue your legacy. And by the way, the word for legacy comes from the word, it's the word nachala. It comes from nachal, it means river. Legacy doesn't end. When a person, life comes to an end, it continues. And I see two kids who look at their dad as a role model, who see a living legacy, and they want to continue. Because I talk to them. What do you want? I want to be like my dad. I want to be like my father. I can't think of a greater tribute. But the reason is because young people respect authenticity. They respect genuineness. And when they see it, they say, I want to be just like that. So it's not just what you say, it's what they see. And thankfully, the two coincide with one another.
Well, and Michael and Daniel are hopping on a plane here June 29th and heading over to Israel for the summer. They're going over. They're going to go in the Sofim program, and they're going to be in. They're going to do a week in the IDF, and they did this all on their own. This was not my idea. They came. They brought it to me, and they said, "Dad, we want to apply for this." And so they're going over with about 250 other Jewish young people, and they're going to do their summer in Israel. So I'm very, very proud of them, and especially proud that it was their thought. I didn't bring it to them. I didn't find it. They found it through some of their friends. And, these are the things, Rabbi, in the midst of all the negative that's happening, we've got to keep our eyes focused on the positive signs that are there.
Robert, it is said young people want three things from adults. They want a hand to hold on, they want a shoulder to lean on, and an example to learn from. And wow. I think with you, they have received all three. So they trust you, they believe in you because they know you stand for something. Moses stood for something. The great leaders, Martin Luther King, Abraham Joshua Heschel, the people we admire, are those who we know there's a real person. You remember the movie The Graduate? And one of the lines in The Graduate is, you want to be success, Benjamin? Plastics. And, you think of that line, says, what was he saying? He said, well, you want to be successful in life? Be plastic, be pliable, be popular, be liked by everybody. You'll do very well that way. Religion says that's not so. Be principled. Don't worry about being popular. Worry about doing that which is right, not that which receives a high rating.
Folks, we're having an amazing conversation with our dear friend, our dear brother, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik. He has served the community in New York City, and not just the Jewish community. During 9/11, he oversaw all of the chaplains, the outreach for the New York City Fire Department. He is revered throughout every strata of society in New York. He has served the people of New York. I had the privilege of being at your birthday party not too long ago, a year or so ago. And Tony Danza came out and sang for you, and the state attorney general was there, and so many leaders were there with their accolades to celebrate the blessing that you have been. Rabbi, as we draw this towards a close, and we're talking today about leadership, we're talking about those who rebel against leadership, and we're talking about how do we pass on positive examples. You and I are both deeply troubled about the upcoming election. And I don't want us to get political here, but I do want us to be Americans, and I want us to be principled. It's a sad commentary that we've lost civility in the public square. Things have become such an absolute, you and I were saying, what person in their right mind would enter politics today? Because It is such a cutthroat. I mean, it always has been, but nothing like it is today. Rabbi, how can we, I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, I don't care. Give us some words of advice. How do we approach this upcoming political season as principled Americans, as Judeo-Christian Americans? How do we bring our best selves to that picnic table with our relatives who disagree with us, to that water cooler conversation? What are some of the principles that you've used as a bridge builder? I can't think of a single person I have ever heard say a negative word about Joe Potasnik. I can't think of it. You are just universally appreciated and respected. What are some of the principles that we can bring to this upcoming political season, so that we can be those peacemakers, rather than part of the solution rather than part of the problem?
You just used a word that I think is critical in our behavior. The word is respect. We have to be role models of respect. We have to show people that we will not tolerate the denigration of other human beings. You can disagree, but don't denigrate me.
That's it.
Former Justice, the Supreme Court, Stephen Breyer, said something interesting. He says, when Supreme Court would go into a session to discuss a case, there was a rule. The person of seniority would perhaps get to speak first. That person couldn't speak again till he or she listened to all of the other arguments. And that person was not allowed to say, I think my argument is better than yours. So look, listen to what somebody else has to say. Don't assume you're smarter than anybody else. And also, when you listen to someone else, you'll learn something from someone else. But I think people want to see that kind of behavior in their leaders. We are trusted leaders, hopefully. They need to see more of that coming from. They're not seeing it on social media, unfortunately.
Right.
In places. We have to be the ones to be exemplars of that decency. We have to be the people who say, this is the way to behave. It's not about your point of view. It's about your behavior. You can have a different belief, but your behavior, is critical in our discussion. And the more they see that, hopefully they'll gravitate more. But at the present time, I can understand. I have a son. He wouldn't want to enter the political arena. And too many people also don't want to enter it because it's dirty. Well, we got to be like Ghostbusters. We got to clean it up. We got to show, what, you can be challenging and you can be challenged. But as long as you are a person who stands for something, you will be respected. Respect will win the day. It did with Moses. It did with Martin Luther King. And hopefully it will continue to repeat itself.
So good. So good. Well, folks, I hope you have been listening both with your heart and your head. And I hope you're hitting the share button. That helps us when you hit the like and the share button to get the word out. And what a powerful conversation with our incredible brother, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik. Now, Rabbi, they can tune in and hear you on WABC, which I'm sure in today's world is able to be listened to not only on radio, but if they're outside of the metro New York area.
WABC.com. And you've been a guest a number of times and a great guest. And Robert, I would be failing my responsibility if I didn't take a moment to remember Erwin Hochberg, who was responsible for us meeting. And he loved you. He loved you. And he said, you have to meet Bishop Robert Stearns. And that began the relationship we share today. So thank you, Erwin Hochberg, who's up. And I think he's saying, thank God I brought them together.
And I don't know if you're aware of this, but when Erwin passed, two things were remarkable to me, because Erwin served on so many boards. He was a volunteer. I mean, he gave so much of himself. But when Erwin passed, two things. Number one, in the New York Times, in his obituary, by his request, the charity that he asked donations to be made to was Eagle's Wings. Out of all all of the charities that he was involved in the New York Times, he asked people to give donations.
Let
Which
me go back and look at that, Robin. I think he meant the New York Board of Rabbis. I think there was a typographical error there. Let me go back and look at that.
But the second thing is that he donated. He had an extensive library around Israel and Jewish causes and Jewish history. And he donated his library to Eagles Wings, which we now house in the Erwin Hochberg Memorial Library at our church, the Tabernacle in Orchard Park.
Legacy.
Hundreds of volumes, many of these historic volumes that you can't find anymore. And it's beautifully preserved. There's a beautiful plaque there in his honor. And so thank you for that. I miss my two Jewish grandfathers, who really both brought me into this whole realm, were Erwin Hochberg and Harvey Kruger.
Right.
And the two of them together were just so powerful. And so thank you and may we continue their legacy, and may we pass on, as you've so beautifully said today, to the next generation, footsteps to follow. And folks, thank you for tuning in. Rabbi, thank you for being here. Folks, tune into WABC.com. Rabbi, it's called The Pastor and the Rabbi. Is that right?
The Rev and the Rabbi.
The Rev and the Rabbi.
But because we read from right to left in Hebrew, it should be the Rabbi and the Rev. You know that.
All right. But you'll be there with my dear friend A.R. Bernard and the others there, the Rev and the Rabbi on WABC.com. And folks, thanks for tuning in. Rabbi, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Be well. We'll see you soon. And everyone, keep remembering to pray and work for the peace